My guest on this week's episode of Suds Search is Martha van Berkel, CEO of SchemaApp. Schema Markup was developed in 2011 as a collaboration between the world's leading search engines. Since that time, the general interest and application of Schema among SEOs has skyrocketed. Martha has become the leading presenter in our industry talking about Schema Markup. She is an in-demand conference presenter, blogger, and educator on topics related to Schema. You may have heard Martha present at Brighton SEO, State of Search, SMX Milan, and Content Marketing Conference. She is a frequent trainer on topics related to Schema. She's appeared on webinars for Bright Local, SEMrush, and for all the impressive content SchemaApp puts out. She started SchemaApp with her husband Mark, and it's become one of the hottest tools in the industry. We'll talk about how the SEO community's intense interest in Schema has led to explosive growth for her company. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation with the extremely impressive Martha van Berkel. We'll talk about how Schema can help with every stage of a marketing funnel. We'll talk about the challenges of creating a tool that can work for Schema diehards and neophytes. And for all our local SEOs out there, I'll ask Martha about local Schema. Martha van Berkel, welcome to Suds Search. How you doing?
I'm jazzed. This is so fun.
I'm looking forward to having you. Schema is a topic we've had several guests kind of touch on, but we haven't had anyone with near your deep level of knowledge. So I wonder, just kind of set the table here. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself, about SchemaApp, and how you became interested in Schema in the first place?
I totally blame my husband. It's all his fault. So a little bit about my background. So I'm Canadian. I'm coming to you live from Guelph, Ontario, which is just outside Toronto. And I have a technical background. So I studied applied math and mechanical engineering, and I just got to go to MIT. And then I actually grew up in enterprise. So I spent 14 years at Cisco, not doing anything Schema related or not even SEO related, although I did sort of online support tools. So I was doing like user experience and how people find information. But it was actually really when my co-founder, Mark, when he was like, I'm gonna start a business and I'm gonna use my semantic background, that he sort of became interested in Schema Markup. And what's interesting about Schema Markup is like the underlayer of it, like that Google uses, is actually semantics, right? Like how do you infer and understand what things are about? And so he built this really awesome tool in about 2014. So we were very, very early on in the Schema Markup journey. But he's really great at product strategy and developing product, and less about sort of talking to people about it. And so I ended up leaving Cisco and joining him in the journey. And he's my partner in everything. So he's my husband. He's the father to my kids, my co-founder, and SchemaApp was born, right? Like this was sort of came out of this like really cool interest in semantics and enabling like a cooler, more automated way of doing Schema Markup, which is where SchemaApp came from. And so I just became to, ask questions and learn. And I had to explain it to, at first, small and medium-sized businesses. So local businesses in our areas who we did it originally with. We actually used to joke, Mark, that like our local businesses had like the best Schema Markup in like 2014, 2015,
yeah,
like
sure.
before anyone did it. And so, the story really just goes that I just have continued to lean into it. And I love how it plays to strategy. So my passion is a lot about like, how does this impact your business? Like, what's the ROI of things? And how do you use this in a way that, isn't just so that, like one and done, get it done, kind of figure out how to get the pretty images in search, but instead, how does this fit into everything else that you're doing? And why does it make sense? And then we built a company. So we're a 20-person company now. Wow. We only do structured data. So like, that's all we do every day, all day. And our technology is, allows us to work with any website, do any type of Schema Markup, and we do it properly. And then we match that sort of with our expert team of customer success managers, so that we help businesses sort of primarily in North America, but around the world, adopt this at scale, and really make sure they're really capturing all the opportunities. So we're really keen to sort of help them make sure they're really maximizing how structured data fits in their overall strategy.
Well, fascinating. And I think that this is such a big topic. I want to kind of start with the sugar. What makes people really like this Schema stuff so much? And one of the things that people really like are rich results. And so that's the big incentive for us. It's a simple table setting question. Maybe tell our listeners who don't know what is a rich result, and a less simple question. Why are they so important to SEO?
Sure. So a rich result is really that additional information that kind of smacks you in the face after you do a search. So if I'm explaining this to my mom and her friends, I'm like, hey, you're looking for that new pair of shoes, like you're searching for the name of them. And then pow, you like see stars and you see the price like directly in the search result. Or, you're looking for, a specific topic and all of a sudden there's FAQs or there's like images for a video to click on. So it's really that rich information that stands out in search sort of when you do that initial search. And so what's so great about rich results is that whether you're technical or not, you can explain like this was the before with no pretty pictures and this is the after. So it's a really kind of clear way of showing the value and how the experience is changing when you adopt this really technical SEO space. So that's sort of like, what is it? And there's also like lots of different features that Google has around rich results. So just like you see the stars, you see the price, you see the FAQ, you see the how-to. Special announcement is a really big one that was used during COVID or like is being used, where it kind of brings out information specifically about sort of like the health and sort of procedures that an organization or a hospital or a city is doing. And then why do you care? Like, why is it strategic for SEOs? So one is, I do think like it's a visual change. So it's an SEOs can actually show that change. And I think for executives who are writing the check, it's sometimes hard to show the magic of the work that you're doing. And so I like that you can kind of visually take them through that. But most importantly, done well, it leads to more high qualified clicks, right? So, like it's all about the data, right? Like if your goal is to show more leads coming in from organic and that those are then converting, whatever that conversion looks like. If you're in health, it might be an appointment. If it's in e-commerce, like they're buying a product. If it's, a software platform, like they're actually booking, a call for a demo. We can show evidence of how that journey's coming through with those clicks.
Yeah, I thought it was so interesting. You were on a webinar for Bright Local. I think it was with Miles, and it seems obvious to me that Schema would help with top of the funnel to get more click-throughs, to improve the results of like you're on the SERP and somebody's actually going to click on you. Miles asked you about how this helps bottom of the funnel traffic that everybody, like that's the stuff that everybody wants to talk about. You had a really compelling, interesting answer for that. Do you remember what? You remember that answer, or maybe you
I have
just
no idea what I said, so you're gonna have to just tell. Give me some hints, Mark. Give me some hints.
No, but I am curious. How does it's clear to me how Schema and writing Schema markup would help top of the funnel as you move through the funnel? How can it be so helpful to the bottom of the funnel traffic?
Yeah, so I want to talk about specificity, and I may have gone into this with Miles, but so like it's interesting where Google's going just generally, right? Like so they want to make sure that the person who's searching is getting the most specific answer that they want, right? And so the reason I talk about specificity is like that's actually what structured data is doing, right? So done properly, like you're describing what that page is about and then like what are the elements of the page. And within that, if you're using the schema markup properly, you're using properties like about or mentions, and you're being really, really specific about those topics. And I was just talking to one of our customer success managers this morning. We do quarterly business reviews, and I was like, it's so interesting how like we see in local search specifically and in other sort of organizations, like people aren't making bajillion landing pages anymore for like every nuance of a region, right? Am I right? Like you're seeing the same thing?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
And part of this is because Google's smarter, right? So if like you're super clear, let's say about a service that you offer and the area that it serves, like they know that in, Santa Clara County, you're close to all these other places like in California. And so I think the bottom of the funnel stuff, when I talk about quality traffic, so it's much harder to measure with the exception of like, I closed more deals this month based on the leads I got, right? Or like my conversion's higher, or, in Keen, they measure it by like % growth in revenue, like in how they do it. But like we're seeing that like that specificity comes in, and Google doesn't necessarily give us the ability to measure that really clearly. That's sort of where the business KPIs play such an important role. So you have to like look at that whole funnel. And in fact, what's really interesting is like in our engagements, like just again, this past month, like we're actually going to call out the funnel for our clients. Like we do it today on front of funnel, and then they share with us some of the like kind of the conversion piece on their side. But is it actually great because we can be like, we can say the rich results are driving like this specific outcome and whatever it is. And that's getting really exciting.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting how you can attribute the better, you're getting a better audience now because of these schema results, which is a huge advantage. So I know SEOs, I know that as these search features begin increasing, SEOs are trying to exploit this as best they can. There's going to be feature hunting is a term I've heard before. One of the things I've heard you use a distinction between building knowledge graphs, not schema code. So that was an interesting idea. What does that mean, and why would building knowledge graphs maybe prevent some of this schema spam from starting in the first place?
Yeah, when you talk about schema spam, I think of like just what we've seen in FAQ this past year happen, where Google has sort of like been dialing back. So starting in like August 2020, they were like, we're not just going to give everyone FAQ, especially if it's like more marketing like FAQ kind of information. It has to really be intent based. Like, are you answering the questions that customer is looking to get answered in the buyer journey or sort of like in their web journey. And I think that's all good. I think the harder part is, it means that if you implement structured data, you might not get that rich result if the content then needs to evolve. And this is, I think I asked one of our customers recently, I was like, what have you learned about structured data in the last year? And she was like, I've learned that like, it's not just an SEO strategy, but it's a really important content strategy.
Great.
And it was really, really cool because like in a lot of our engagements, like we'll go in and we're enabling that SEO team or that digital team. And then next thing we know in year 2, we're talking more to their content team around content strategy and evolution.
Yeah, totally.
Than just because like we've now structured it, we have architected the site so we can get the schema out. Like, how do we now maximize the return? And I do think like not so much feature hunting, but like maximizing structured data is a good thing, right? Like, how do you look at coverage? How do you look at rich result opportunities by content type? And when I talk about like doing strategy, and I will get to your knowledge graph, I'm going there, is that like you should be looking at your content and saying, which rich result could I get for this? And then how do I architect the content to make sure I'm maximizing that? So, you do want to be thinking through what is it going to look like in the search at the beginning so that I can maximize it. And some of that will be testing, right? Like, can we get FAQ on this type of page? Like, is that going to get rewarded, or do I need to switch that and try something different? And so the other piece, like when you're thinking about strategy is sort of like all these things are connected. And I think we're not fully appreciating like Google's kind of like ability to infer if we're thinking that they're just thinking of things as pages. In fact, like I was reading like the recent update that came out, I think it was like late March, but all the kind of product review side, like Glenn Gabe's research was saying like they're looking at it as a site. They're not just looking at it by a page. Did you read that? Like how a lot of his pieces, he was like saying how the whole site. And I love that because if you then think of it as like, well, then just the structured data on one page, like Google's looking at the whole picture. Right. They're not just looking at the one page, right? Like they want to understand like how are all these things connected? Like what is like, what are the entities that this site's talking about? And so when I talk about connected schema markup, that's what I mean, right? So if you're like, yeah, I'm going to just do it on this like product page and I'm going to do it on my homepage, I'm going to do it on my contact page, but I'm actually not going to explain how those things are related, then you're kind of, I think you're just thinking too tactically. Like you're thinking in like 2017 schema markup instead of like actually anticipating where Google is going. Like Google is smart, right? Like I even think of the other trends that we're seeing from them around, this is a nuance in the documentation, but like I actually like dug it out. I think it was like November 2019 where like they were like, use ad IDs to explain how things are connected. And they were talking about a recipe markup and how like in the recipe markup, we want you to like nest the video or you want to like use the same ad ID. So you're basically saying these things are connected. And they're saying so that we can show a video as the result or we can show the recipe rich result. And we loved this. We're like, seriously, like we've been telling everyone to do this forever. Like, thank you, Google, for like continuing to update your documentation to say like these things have to be connected. Like it is around around like the relatedness and the entities.
I think this is such a good point. Like, one of the things about your area of expertise is this is one place where Google explicitly tells you to do this. So in SEO, we're kind of mildly irritated sometimes about algorithm updates and less than perfect transparency on SERP changes or whatever. I wonder if you feel like writing good schema. We've said some of the main reasons you should do it, but Google, Bing, all these search engines tell you to do it. Maybe that's a compelling enough reason in and of itself, no?
It's interesting because like this is my business, right? And like I've been telling people so like the vocabulary has been around since 2011, right? And it's extensive. And I think what's really interesting is that like we're seeing the vocabulary evolve really quickly. So one of the data points like we looked at recently is like since 2011 when it came out till last year, there was 16 releases of the schema.org vocabulary. And in the last year, so March 2020 to March 2021, there's been 12 releases. So like if that is an evidence of like an area accelerating, and then if you get really nerdy into like who's participating in evolving the vocabulary, it's Google Shopping. It's like different areas of Google that are sort of articulating what they need in order to better understand and then bring like different experiences in. And, big lean into e-commerce and healthcare, which again is sort of evident, like the world's at a place where like those two things are so important right now. I think people avoid it because it's complicated. Yeah. And right. And I would say like, don't write schema markup. Like you have better things to do. Like there's if you don't want to buy SchemaApp where like you get awesome support and like we'll guide you through it, like at least use a generator because like it is complicated and you don't want to be spending time trying to figure out where the quotes are. Some people push me, they're like, but I really want to understand and learn it. Great. Write it a couple times to understand and learn like how these things in nesting works. But then, like use tools to automate it so that you can think instead about how am I architecting my page again to maximize the rich results so that again, you're making a bigger impact on the metrics, right? Like that's a key thing, what we want to see.
Yeah, I love it. It's an interesting point you just made. Like you talk to marketers all day. It seems to me that there are two, this is just totally my experience. There are like two kinds of marketers when it comes to schema. Some, like half the group, if you start using words like JSON LD and micro data, they get a glossy look over their face and begin daydreaming about doing just about anything else. Then there are these marketers who start talking about the same concepts. They lean forward in their chair. They cannot wait to dig in. They get excited about it. You have a tool that you have to kind of maybe meet people wherever they are. And so on the one hand, you want to make a tool that these people who really want to get into it can get really into it. And on the other hand, you need something where people just don't want to code. So that's why they got the schema. Yeah. Just curious, how do you make a tool for this audience where there's these two really different kinds of people in there? And do you agree? Well, I guess, do you even agree with my argument here?
Yeah, I sort of see two camps. So some that really like want to nerd out on it and get into the details and like writing the code, right? Where if I was like automated, they'd be like, oh my goodness, Martha, what are you talking about? Like that's the beauty and art of it. I guess I'm just like more practical, like as a business owner and also just like as an individual, it's like, man, if there's something you can automate, like focus on the thing that is your secret sauce, right? Like focus on the strategy piece to me is more important. I sort of see two camps. One where like they really understand it and get it. And then the other where like they're just super interested in the impact to the business, right? So like, and I think this has been the fun part of doing it, in that like, so we've built tools. Again, our primary tool we built was first for SMB. That's the world we lived in. It has every single property. So like some people are like, oh my gosh, like there's just too much stuff to hang, but it's an expert tool, right? Like it's there to allow you to like use all the nuances and all the pieces. It automatically nests, generates, and then we also automate deployment because who wants to copy and paste code? Because as soon as you paste it, the content changes. Darn, now I need to update it. So we try to kind of solve that maintenance piece. And then the other is our highlighter, which is like more at scale. So, you highlight elements of the page and then set it up. And this is really trying to get SEOs in the idea of architecting your content, right? So like, how do you think of like these different types of content pages? What are you maximizing the rich result for? And then, focus on writing that amazing content. So like if the FAQs aren't converting, like change the FAQ content, like add some, HTML links in there so that you're getting a click through that piece. Or Or, think about, often I'm like, go talk to the people who answer the phones and ask what questions they're getting and sort of really make sure you understand intent. And then I would say the other thing is like we do a lot of managed services for people where they're like, I just want the outcome. We just want your expertise. So teach us along the way. And so, we use our tools. We're our biggest consumer of our tools, as well as sort of enabling businesses to do that.
Makes perfect sense. So, all right. So I wanted to ask you a specific question about local. So our audience probably skews towards local SEOs, just
no problem.
Greg and my nature. One of the things that happens in these small businesses, they're always triaging, prioritizing, figuring out what's the most important thing here. If a local business, either an SEO or an owner, is looking at this and they go, "Yeah, I want those rich results. I want to give Google what they're looking for." What's the logical first step to getting into Schema? Where do they begin?
Yeah, great question. And I think with local, like Google's skewing so much over to Google My Business. And I think that's like just something like it's easy interface to use, like kind of takes up that really great, nice right-hand side. So I would say, like for local businesses, like you want to be really strategic. And then especially if it's the operator or the owner that's doing it, that we want to think about like, what can we automate? And so I'm a big believer of, like there's a lot of good out of the box schema markup on some platforms, which is a really good place to start. So we have a free WordPress plugin that still has all like the nerdy stuff that we talk about, but it's built in. It's where we started, right? So if you look at like the SchemaApp WordPress plugin, like that's a really great place to start to just automate. We do take a different approach than Yoast. So if you have Yoast, like Yoast also does schema markup on their plugin, better than nothing. Jono and I are on the SEMrush webinars together, and we have different approaches. Like we don't like talking. We don't like. So at SchemaApp, we don't call it a web page because, of course, it's a web page. Like we want to talk about the thing that it is. So the default plugins will do like blog posting, article, and then allow you also to then use our editor to create the organization markup. So my big play with small businesses is usually there's like 5 pages. So do 5 pages and then just like update them on a quarterly basis is usually my approach and where we started. And they want to be strategic. So like homepage, contact page, any products or services. Again, if you're on WordPress or WooCommerce, there's some out of the box pieces. Again, we have some options there, Shopify, et cetera. There's plugins. We have a Shopify and BigCommerce plugin as well. So, make sure your products and services, like we have a great article on our website on like how to do schema markup for services. Great. And we recently updated it because the whole ratings and local business, like big disappointment. Like I could rant on that all day about like how I want businesses to own their own ratings and not sort of have to go through third-party sites. But like products can get a rich result and you can do a rating on those. And so one of the things that we used to say is like services is actually a schema markup class, but you can actually do something called multi-typing where it's a service and a product. And Google Schema.org recently updated their documentation. I say recently, my world is just like moves really fast. In the last 6 to 8 months, I think it was, to where the product, Schema.org product description actually says product or services. Now, there's things in the services schema markup that allow you to say like who it's offered by and like very service related type of properties. So we like multi-typing those. And so our how-to's been updated to show how you multi-type those. And again, you can do that in the SchemaApp editor really easily. But the products and services are really, really important. Okay, I think I got 3. Products and services, contact page, homepage, the people. So the reason I like people, and sometimes this is founders, sometimes it's different pieces, is that often the business is the people, right? And when you're talking about a small business. And so if you have like an about page, you can talk out mentions and sort of call out like the different owners on the site, on the page or the business. So I really like those. And then the last one I like is FAQ. And when I talk about FAQ, there's often like, so you can nest FAQ under those services pages, right? So like love that approach. But also, like what are the top questions you get about your business, right? So, if you're a local business, it may not be an extensive list, again, I generic, like I'll say like with our mid to large customers, I tend to not like just generic FAQ pages. But if the FAQ is about the business, have an FAQ page. And I think that's a really great one that, again, differentiates, and then use that about. So if it's about the business, like link it back to the business and so forth. So for local businesses, try to automate as much as possible. And that's like, are you on WordPress? Are you on Shopify? Wix, etc. And then if you can't, then look to generate markup, for those key pages. And the other question I usually ask is like, what are you known for? Like, what is it that's so important to your business? Because a small business or a local business could also be bigger, right? And have lots of different services and products. And so then I tie it to the business strategy. So like, what are the things like you're trying to grow sales in? Let's say it's like one segment of your business. Great, focus there first. But always do your organization, because I want to kind of connect the dots back and make sure people know what that's about.
That's fascinating. Well, excellent advice. I want to make sure people know how to reach you and your company. What's the best way to get in touch with you?
So a couple different ways. So our website is best. So www.SchemaApp.com. And there's a contact page. You can ask questions. We also, if you are a smaller business, we do have a 14-day free trial. So if you go to solutions, you'll see sort of like the editor there that you can go to a trial. So that's a great way if you want to just get your hands dirty. We do email support. So you can ask any question to our expert team, and they'll answer you on email in order to help you get there. And then if you want to connect with me directly, Twitter is best. So at Martha van Berkel, you can follow me there, or on LinkedIn, and then you can DM me after we connect. I'm happy to answer your questions.
All right. Well, Martha, thank you so much for coming on. You've been an amazing evangelist for Schema the whole time I've been into it. And so I thank you so much for everything you've done, and thanks for coming on Suds Search. So I think I'll give you a virtual cheers, and we'll sign off for now.
Woo woo!
And we'll be back next week for another episode of Suds Search.